This moment is calling on all of us to be able to hold multiple truths and multiple feelings at the same time. The reality is that America is under siege and has been for roughly the last decade. We've been under siege by a barrage of lies, by misinformation, by hatred, by evil, by greed, and by those that want to use their power and their platform to oppress in order to get more, more power, more money, just more. This insatiable desire that has been fed by Trumpism is our tipping point moment. As I said yesterday, and I will continue to say, LA is a test case. And as we go through this week, we are leading up to 5501's big protest, No King's Day. And I wonder what we will see, because what we are beginning to understand right now is that the people have power. The people have a voice, and a people united will not be divided or silenced. What Donald Trump is doing is creating a common enemy. What we have always seen is that when Americans have their backs up against the wall, when they are shown the truth of abusive power, they push back. It is that very pushback that formed the United States in the first place. There are no kings here. And the question is whether or not the power of the people will be enough to topple this regime. Let's get ready, friends. It is time for the Danielle Moodie Show. Time magazine has put out a new cover, and it is this, and it is gorgeous. It is Donald Trump's loud, open mouth, his wig as the flames of Lady Liberty's torch. And the background, which is black, is barbed wire around the torch. Donald Trump is the one that is causing the violence. Donald Trump is trying to play himself as both the arsonist and somehow the firefighter. What Donald Trump is showing the American people is just how weak and thin skinned he is. Because in a democracy, we have dissent. It is our right as a people to speak out against our government, against representatives. But every time that Donald Trump has been faced with pushback, with dissent, he wants to roll out the military. Now, in his first regime, he was told that he couldn't shoot folks in the leg, that, that was unlawful. In this second regime, with his DUI hires, they are itching for the opportunity to bring down severe force on the people of this country. The question that I want all of us to be asking, though, is that while Donald Trump is deploying thousands of National Guard, hundreds of Marines to the city of LA, what is he actually distracting us from? Because you see, it is never just about one thing. So The New York Times editorial board a few days ago wrote this: Trump calling troops into Los Angeles is the real emergency. Guard members also almost always arrive at the request of state leaders. But in California, Governor Gavin Newsom called the deployment of troops purposefully inflammatory and likely to escalate tensions. It had been more than 60 years, folks, since a president sent in the National Guard on his own volition, which made Trump's order on Saturday to do so both ahistoric and based on false pretenses, and is already creating the very chaos it was purportedly designed to prevent. The last time this presidential authority was used over a governor's objections was when John F. Kennedy overruled the governor of Alabama and sent troops to desegregate the University of Alabama in 1963. Supporters of quote unquote states' rights and segregation howled at the time in the usual corners, are still howling about it. To the extent that protests or acts of violence directly inhibit the execution of the laws, they constitute a form of rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States. This is what Donald Trump wrote in an executive order, which is not a law, but rather a memo to the executive branch. Yet the closest this nation has come to such a definition of rebellion was when Trump's own supporters, whom he incited, then mostly pardoned, sacked the US Capitol in 2021. They go on to say this: some legal experts note that Trump's order goes even further. He has also authorized deployment of troops anywhere in the country where protests against immigration and customs enforcement are occurring or are likely to occur, even if they are entirely peaceful. Liza Gotein, the senior director at the Liberty and National Security Program at the Brennan Center for Justice, said in a social post, "That is unprecedented and a clear abuse of power." But here's the thing: Donald Trump's been abusing power. He's been abusing power when he was in the White House the first time and when he was a quote unquote civilian. There are no limits or guardrails. But the question that I continue to ask is, what is Donald Trump in this ahistoric, unbelievable escalation of violence against peaceful civilians? What else is going on in this regime that we're not paying attention to because all eyes are on LA? And so today, I'm going to run you through some that haven't been getting the attention they deserve because, once again, Donald Trump, the Wizard of MAGA, has been able to stir up such chaos, such anger, such fear, such anxiety that we take our eyes off of all the other bouncing balls of this regime that are causing harm and wreaking havoc. So I bring you first up the trade wars. The World Bank forecast underscores cost of U.S. trade war. Along with a sharply downgraded projection for global output this year, it urged a, quote, course correction on trade to help preserve living standards. Folks, let's take this in for a minute. They urge a course correction to help preserve living standards. What does that mean exactly? Well, my interpretation is that these unnecessary sales taxes that are going to be added to all of our products that we actually need here are going to serve a considerable blow to our family household incomes. And that because of this, our living standards, our ability to provide for ourselves in the ways that we have will take a major hit. The global economy is projected to slow sharply this year as Trump's trade policy disrupts international commerce and increases economic uncertainty. The World Bank said on Tuesday in a report that underscores the toll of America's trade war. Despite the weakening outlook, the global economy is not expected to fall into recession. This is the global economy, mind you, not the US economy. However, the trade tension is setting the stage for the weakest decade of growth since the 1960s. Economic development in many of the poorest parts of the world has come to a standstill. So, once again, the things that Donald Trump is doing, none of which are helping anyone, not anyone in this country, and certainly not anyone around the world. That Donald Trump, this let's make a deal, would first of all follow economic advice from Ron Vera, Peter Navarro's made up fucking expert that his son in law saw on Amazon and said, "Oh, this is a book that I'm not going to read, but this guy sounds like he's on to something. He should be the next economic advisor to the administration." That's how Peter Navarro got his job. And when people did just a teeny bit of research, they realized that the expert who was referenced multiple times in this book, oh, yeah, didn't exist. And the entirety of the premise of the book was about instituting unbelievable tariffs in a way to have other countries pay their fair share. Says nothing of the disruption that it's going to cause in the world's economic progress and how businesses and other countries will come to a standstill because of these unnecessary tariffs, and how Donald Trump, has been playing a game of chicken with the country of China, who doesn't often blink. So, what we are up against, while the world may be able to figure out new relationships and navigate the uncertain seas of this economic tsunami that is coming to hit all of us, what is certain is that America is going to be hit hardest, that Americans are going to be hit hardest. And while Donald Trump was telling CEOs of places like Walmart and Target and Lowe's to quote unquote eat the tariffs, the only people that are going to be eating the tariffs and choking on them are the American people. But, what does he care? The world economy today is once more running into turbulence. Indermit Gill, chief economist of the World Bank, wrote in the report, "Without a swift course correction, the harm to living standards could be deep." Now, of course, folks, this should be setting off alarm bells, I don't know, everywhere. But because Donald Trump has pulled the fire alarm over in LA and has diverted all of attention to the militarization that is happening there, that he says will happen in other states around the country, we're not paying attention to the other ways in which Donald Trump is devastating this country, doing away with political norms, and upending our economic progress that was once the envy of the world post-COVID. He is playing magician with the market, or rather, market manipulation, in order to get his friends who are already rich richer, while the rest of us choke on the decisions that he is making. But what else is happening while Donald Trump puts boots on the ground in LA? Well, this lunatic, RFK Jr., who the New York Times refers to as a vaccine skeptic, the man is not a vaccine skeptic. He is a conspiracy theorist that has no medical degree, no medical understanding, and spreads lies, and false information, and is in charge of the health and well-being of 330 million Americans. So what did RFK Jr. do? Oh, okay. Well, Kennedy removes all CDC vaccine panel experts. The U.S. Health Secretary chose to retire members of a committee that makes significant decisions about who receives immunizations, including the vaccines for children. Now, let's be really clear that this man is not a doctor. He's not even a scientist, right? He's not even like, I don't know, anybody's medical understudy. He's a man that has spread a bunch of crock, that like is a QAnon conspiracy theorist, that has brain worms in his head, that sings the praises of illicit drug use, and like is just psychotic in his behavior, has now fired actual doctors and scientists and dietitians and experts who are supposed to keep the rest of us safe. The CDC's vaccine advisors wield enormous influence. They carefully review data on vaccines, debate the evidence, and vote on who should get the shots and when. Insurance companies and government programs like Medicaid are required to cover the vaccines recommended by the panel. So let's think back to COVID for a moment, shall we? So during COVID, as Operation Warp Speed, the only good thing that came out of the Trump regime, after they told people to inject bleach and liberate states and not cover your mouth with a little piece of fucking cloth that could save grandma and grandpa as well as yourself. Nonetheless, when the vaccines were available, there was order to who was going to get those shots first, namely those that were most vulnerable, the elderly, children, etc. When you learn, if you're pregnant, right, what are the vaccines that you're able to get and should get while you're pregnant? What vaccinations should your newborn babies get as they move from up into toddlerhood, into childhood, as they're entering into school? This is what this advisory panel does. Not only do they alert us of the rise in particular viruses, but they offer us ways to protect ourselves through, scientific methods and vaccines. RFK Jr., a man with worms in his brain, has just fired all of the experts. So guess what? We have no idea what is going to happen next. The committee was supposed to meet June 25th to the 27th. It's unclear when the new members will be announced. And I don't know whether or not the new members are just fucking golf buddies of RFK Jr. or other fucking quacks from his QAnon circle. Who the fuck are these people? And what background do they have? The assumption being no background in science, medical research, or real doctors, but just a bunch of people sitting around swapping conspiracy theories and putting the health and safety of this country at risk. So they're saying that the meeting is going to proceed as planned, but who's going to be leading that meeting and who these people are, God only knows. This is the latest in a series of moves that Kennedy, a vaccine skeptic — no, he's not a skeptic, he's a fucking conspiracy theorist and a danger to this country — has made to dismantle decades of policy standards for immunizations. An advisory panel more closely aligned with Kennedy's views, his crackpot fucking conspiracy theories, has the potential to significantly alter or even drop the recommendations for immunizations to Americans, including childhood vaccinations. The decision directly contradicts a promise that Kennedy made to Senator Bill Cassidy, Republican of Louisiana, during his confirmation hearing. Quote, of course, now the fear is that the ACIP will be filled with people who know nothing about vaccines except suspicion. Oh, well, here's an idea, Senator Cassidy. Maybe you shouldn't have voted for the fucking man that like shoots and kills bears and drops them in fucking Central Park, or hails the, psychological effects of heroin use, and whose own family members have fucking disowned him because he's a lunatic. Maybe you shouldn't have taken his word for it. You know, it's, I swear to God, it's like one way or another, this administration is going to try and cause the most amount of harm possible. Because what I realized and what I posted the other day on Blue Sky is that autocracies thrive on an undereducated, unhealthy, broke, and desperate population. Because then you get them to bend to your will. You throw the crumbs at them, and they are so desperate because of the climate of chaos and manufactured disaster that you've created that they'll do anything just to keep their heads above water. That is exactly what this regime is doing. And so here comes from a doctor, ProPublica. My concern is that there is going to be a large outbreak of not just measles, but other vaccine preventable diseases as well. That's going to end up causing a lot of harm and possibly deaths in children, said Dr. Anna Durbin of Johns Hopkins. Not just measles, guess what? Whooping cough cases are soaring as vaccine rates decline. While much of the country is focused on the spiraling measles outbreak, experts warn that whooping cough and other preventable diseases could get even worse. Children have already died. Unvaccinated children who caught measles have already died. Now, it's anyone's guess how many more will die. And for those people who are just like, well, thank God my kids are vaccinated, how long are you going to be certain that your kids are going to be able to get vaccinated in these United States? That it isn't just going to ultimately be the decision of RFK Jr. to remove all vaccines. And then once again, guess who will be able to get them? Those who have the resources to fly to other countries. But trust me when I say this, that American citizens who are living inside of this devolving nation where disease is going to become rampant, you are going to see one by one as nations decline to admit and allow into their countries Americans. Because why the fuck would they? So that we can spread measles, whooping cough, and other things? Because what's going to happen, folks, is that these kinds of viruses that vaccines made damn near extinct, they'll mutate, they'll change. And because we no longer have the CDC and we no longer are a part of the WHO, we won't know what's coming until it's too fucking late. This is not me being hyperbolic. This is the truth of what is happening. Measles is already in Canada. Mexico and other countries have already issued travel warnings to certain states, and it's only a matter of time until it's to the entire country. So, what else is happening while Donald Trump is sicking the military against US citizens? Well, what's going on with Social Security and Doge? There was a case up at the Supreme Court. And guess who the Supreme Court decided with? Supreme Court allows Doge to access Social Security data. The unsigned 6-3 decision in the Social Security Administration versus AFSCME granted the Trump administration's emergency request to suspend a lower court injunction that had temporarily limited Doge's access to non-anonymized records held by the Social Security Administration. The ruling allows Doge immediate access to personal data, including Social Security numbers, medical histories, and banking information, data protected under the Privacy Act of 1974. We conclude that under the present circumstances, SSA may proceed to afford members of the SSA Doge team access to the agency records in question in order for those members to do their work. The majority ruled. What work is that exactly? The work of them locating fraud that doesn't actually exist, or the ability to take away people's social security numbers and their ability to fucking work? I just like when people say to me, but the courts are holding. Yeah, maybe the lower courts are holding, but the Supreme Court pretty much sold out a long fucking time ago when 3 MAGA members were placed by Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell. This country is so incredibly fucked. It's unconscionable. Plaintiffs in the case, a coalition of unions and retirees represented by Democracy Forward, sued the Social Security Administration because it gave Doge staffers highly sensitive personal data without following established safeguards. They argued this violated the Privacy Act of 1974 and the Administrative Procedure Act, exposing millions of Americans to unlawful data disclosure. But the Supreme Court said, fuck it. It's open season for the Trump regime and the incel babies at Doge. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, joined by Justice Sonia Sotomayor, issued a blistering dissent, warning that the court's decision, quote, creates grave privacy risks for millions of Americans. The government wants to give Doge unfettered access to this personal, non-anonymized information right now before the courts have time to assess whether Doge's access is lawful, Brown Jackson wrote. But the government fails to substantiate its stay request by showing that it or the public will suffer irreparable harm absent this court's intervention. These are just a few of the things that are happening while Donald Trump creates chaos around the country. Like I said at the top, this coming weekend is the No Kings protest. As we have seen since the weekend, there have been protests that have erupted in New York, in Ohio, in Boston, in Providence, and it will continue. And they will get bigger. My concern is for the safety and well-being of the people, but the fact of the matter is that we're not safe. This regime is ensuring that we will not be safe. We are not safe from their health decisions. We are not safe from their data breaches. We are not safe. This country is under attack. This regime is taking us apart piece by piece. And now the escalation is turning to violence. If Americans don't continue to resist peacefully and fight back against this regime, there will be nothing left. It is up to all of us to do our part because resistance, right, actually matters. Take a listen to Rachel Maddow this week.
And we have never seen a president less politically skilled, less politically equipped than this one to turn that kind of problem around. And so he has panicked. He is trying to hit the eject button. Somebody convinced this president that attacking immigrants would work for him politically. Somebody convinced him that the American people would be bloodthirsty about that we'd love it, that the crueler he was to immigrants, the more political capital he would accrue. Instead, what we are seeing is the opposite. In town after town, in blue states and red states, in school after school, in parish after parish, in city after city, it has run him into a wall because the American people do not want this kind of cruelty against the immigrants who live among us and are our neighbors and friends. And facing that kind of heart and that kind of resolve and that kind of non-violent, good cheer, I could do this forever kind of spirit, he has no idea what to do. Remember in his first term when the hurricane was coming and he said he wanted to nuke it? He wanted to hit the hurricane with a nuclear bomb? That's the genius level that we're dealing with here, right? Great idea, genius. Now in his second term, he is trying the equivalent. He has no idea what to do with the sustained and growing and intractable and indomitable protest and opposition of the American people against him. And so he has decided to try to fix it by using the army. Sure. Game over, big guy. You lose. The movement against Trump is unstoppable, now more than ever.
And finally, today, I will end with this, with once again saying, every one of us has a role to play. Every one of us has a platform that can be utilized to spread truth, instill the right information as disinformation spreads rampant now more than ever. But there are people who are rising to the occasion. And like I say, and continue to say, courage is contagious. Last night, the absolutely incredible hip hop artist Doechii received a BET Award for Female Artist of the Year. And she used that moment on the stage to speak out and speak up. That is how you use your platform. That is how you use your power. None of us are free until we are all free. And the one thing that Donald Trump is helping each and every one of us to see is that our fates are indeed intertwined. And that when we lock arms and we resist and do so peacefully, loudly, and consistently, we create the fissures necessary to topple this regime. So, as I say at the end of every show, power to the people and to all the people power. Get woke, stay sane, and in these extraordinarily dangerous times, dear friends, do stay safe. Speak out and speak up because your silence will not protect you. And if you have yet to subscribe to this channel, please do hit subscribe. It is free. Also, like, comment, and share. Feed the algorithm fairies and help me grow this channel to hit 25,000. We're just so close, but we got to keep going and we got to keep growing. I will see you back here tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern. Be well.